Hello, cousins. Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording has started, and by participating in SASS, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which I'll post in the chat. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. And I think, Iridescence, are you handling the announcements today?
Yes, sorry, I was having a little bit of trouble with the buttons. Hi, good morning, everybody. Let's see. For announcements, we have a writing workshop coming up, a journaling workshop, sorry, on the 22nd, hosted by our mod, Stephanie. She's been working really hard on this workshop, and it's going to be amazing. So definitely check that out under events, and it's also under workshops. Yes, and if you want to go off about it, I can pass the mic back. The only other announcement I can really think of is that we are in a new month. So those of us in foundations, it's time to check out the journal prompt, start thinking about it. We'll have some early discussions on it in shadow study on Monday. That's in foundations on Monday nights. And we have Sacred Space coming up on the 7th. And also next Saturday, which I think those actually might be the same day this time around. So we might just have a whole bunch of SASS or Sacred Space all at once. And I think that's it, unless anybody can think of any other announcements they'd like to share. It's good to see so many people. So today we planned to have a discussion focused on Reiki. Obviously, if there's something else coming up for you, we're not gonna, there's no, you can't talk about that. We never do that. But we did want to have a specific focus on Reiki today, since it's been such a popular subject in the community lately. Yeah. So I guess I'll go ahead and start out. This is mostly an experience sharing space. This isn't a teaching space. So we're not, nobody's going to be teaching you like how to do it, or what the practice is. But mostly this is for like sharing personal experience, and yeah, we're just gonna kind of dissect the concept of it, and have a good discussion about it. So I will start out sharing my experience. So I learned Reiki, as that was like my first foray into anything really energetic. Before that, I had seen the Secret documentary. I worked at a horse rescue, and my boss was like super spiritual, so she like had me watch that documentary. And that was really my first thoughts on it. But then when it came to actually learning to move energy in my energy body, I had taken a Reiki class. And I appreciated my teacher. She was very diverse. She was a curandera, which is like a Latin witch, essentially. And she was really diverse in a lot of the modalities that she would teach me. So we learned about like emotional freedom techniques. She taught me about muscle testing. She taught about different methods for grounding, different methods for clearing your energy, or cleansing is what she called it. And for her own personal like healing work, she used what's called the body code and the emotion code, which is like a piece of software. Oh, it's called The Secret. It's kind of an older documentary, but yeah, it's totally worth checking out. And like dissecting. It's a little bit it's a little bit cheesy, but it's totally worth the watch. It's I can't remember who it's by, but it's called The Secret. Um, it's a little bit conspiracy theory is like theory-ish, but it's a good one. So it's all about the law of attraction, if I remember correctly, is like the main basis of it. Um, my teacher would use these programs in her own healing work, but she was teaching Reiki like on the side as like a little like side gig. She so what I learned was from that was a structure on how to move energy in a way that I didn't know before because I didn't know about my energetic body before interacting with that. And so for me, that was a really important piece of information to learn. I don't practice Reiki anymore because I understand more about my energy body. I understand more about my connection with the earth. And I don't feel like I need to call upon Reiki itself in order to facilitate my own energetic work, whether I'm working with myself or another person. But to be honest, I don't really like working with other people with my own energy. I do want to go to massage school, and I think it would be, part of my own energy work to be applying that to that work. I think they kind of go hand in hand, but I don't. I believe in empowering people to learn about their own energetic body, and to me, the way that Western civilization is kind of colonized and capitalized on Reiki is kind of frustrating. You have to take 3 classes. They're usually like what, like $200 or $300 each. You gotta, and from what I experienced, my teacher told me that she was like drawing symbols on my soul, and I wasn't allowed to know the symbols, and your guess you're not allowed to learn them until you're a master. Um, and For me, it was just a little disempowering the way that it was gone about. It felt like I was initiating into a practice that I wasn't being informed about, which for me, I need to know what's happening. I don't really like the idea of like initiating into something without all the information. And if anybody's going to draw symbols on my soul, it's going to be me. Like that's important to me. And It's, like I said, it was a really good structure for me to, start out learning with, but when I went back to go do Reiki 2, something my teacher said just really stuck with me. Um, and it was that she was like, "You don't really need the other classes." She's like, "You can practice with what I've taught you now." And it was, like, really disillusioning because at the time I was like, "Oh, I have to, take all 3 of these courses and I have to finish it." And I realized how institutionalized, thinking was, like, really driving me at that point. It was like, I have to get my degree in it, right, in order to be able to, effectively practice it. And that was, like, something that really started me on the path of, like, deconstructing energy work. Um, so yeah, um, and it's such a weird side note, but at the time we were hanging out at the park together, and I kept smelling something dead, and it was, like, really close by, and, it turned out that in the lake nearby, somebody had set free their pet turtle, and it had, like, not survived yeah, the forces of nature, so it was like rotting nearby. I don't think my teacher could smell it or anything because I was like, "Do you smell that?" And she was like, "No." um oh yeah, that was something else. So there was kind of a controversy on TikTok about this for a while, and it's something I've been considering. I don't claim to know what's true and right, and I would never tell you, what to believe. But something that I started considering after there was like this guy that was talking on TikTok about how So I can't remember the myth exactly. I'm sure, somebody else here probably has more accurate details, but uh the like base idea of Reiki was that a man in Japan went to the top of a mountain and he received the instructions on how to do Reiki and then started teaching people. Um, and then his daughter brought it to Hawaii. Excuse me, sorry. And she started teaching classes in Hawaii, and then it kind of got colonized on the mainland from there. Um, and so this guy on TikTok, I can't remember the dude's username, but I found his perspective to be really interesting. He started talking about how um, if you thought about it as like an entity, then by practicing that entity's instructions, you're kind of using the entity as a middleman for energy. And so, because entities that aren't embodied, they can't interact with the physical world without convincing a person to do so for them. I don't really believe that like it's like um anything other really than like a contract, but I don't really like to sign contracts when I don't really know, like, because I wouldn't even be able to assume what's involved because this wasn't my interaction with this entity. I think it has more to do with the dude who started it in his own line, because when you're initiated into a lineage. And uh now when I think of lineage, I think of ancestors that actually resonate with my spirit and actually resonate with my blood. And the energy of those ancestors feels much more potent, um, because I practice connection-based magic, than a connection that I bought into, essentially, for my experience with Reiki. Uh, so I just thought that was perspective was kind of interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Stephanie. Thank you for letting me go off for a minute. And I'm super excited for this discussion. So let's go.
Thank you, Ocean. That real everything you said was resonated with me so much because that's very similar to my experience. I did my level one Reiki 25 years ago. So I was like 25 years old. I don't even know how I found out about it or ended up there, but it was that was my life in a nutshell in my 20s. That just would do do things that appeared in my path, but and they always got me exactly where I needed to be. But it was my first as well experience with energetics and healing and moving these things. And I found that it felt very powerful to me and it felt very effective to me. So much so that I needed to learn more on how to protect myself a little bit because sometimes I would make myself just physically ill moving that kind of energy. So it needed a lot more work than I got in the level one training. But I, like you, was a little bit unnerved by feeling that it was like super colonized and I didn't have control or choice. I didn't have full choice. I didn't feel like I had full informed consent with everything, the way that it was being presented to me, like it was to you. But I have continued to use it at home with pets and family, and I found it the practice very, very useful in that respect. I have friends that are, Reiki practitioners for their business. I think um, in the current state of how our um, culture works, you know, I think that's a good idea if you're going to introduce it as a business to be able to just have the full knowledge and the full certification as support for you. So I think that that's a really good thing if you're going in that direction. But one day I was uh, working with my daughter, wasn't feeling well with Reiki, and I thought to myself, um, oh, I should really look into going and getting my level two. And immediately I felt this very, very strong download that was like, you don't need to do that. You can access what you need without that. And I felt like at that time, I really realized that I had done so much growing that it all looked very different to me. Um, and I just kind of leaning into trusting that feeling currently. That could change, right? The more that I learn about things, I always like to leave that open. Like, this is the way I feel like right now. More information might change, or more experience might change how I feel about that. Um, but just last week, it was wild. One of my very long time friends is my also my massage therapist, and I was feeling very rattled and ungrounded by a lot of everything going on around us right now. And I had an appointment with her, and so I mentioned that, and she said, "You have to go and get your Reiki." And I said, "Well, I did my level one, and I've kind of deconstructed it a little bit, so I'm not really sure how I feel like that right now." And she's like, "Well, you have to, and this will be the best thing for you, and you should." It was getting kind of wild. It actually got really out of hand by my standing my ground and being like, "No, I'm kind of in the process of deconstructing this a little, and it was colonized, and I don't feel really good about that right now." And she was like, "It was started by a woman, so it can't be colonized." And then that's when I was like, "Oh, this conversation is just going absolutely nowhere." I can't. So, I would have been very willing to have um, the conversation, but it's so funny that that came up literally in this past week before this SASS, which because it's made me take a real look at that other everybody's beliefs around it, and the colonization behind it goes so deep. Um, and people, you know, that's her reality to her. Um, it's valid that her perspective, and it was coming from a place of caring. Um, and what I've learned in this group is, sticking to my beliefs and my boundaries. And that moment was very challenging, but it really brought to light like how I was feeling about the colonization and the you know conditioning around Reiki, because I really do believe that we all have access to energetics, however that works for us. Um, as humans, it's just we've got to figure out what is right for us. And I'm sure, and for Reiki, for some, Reiki is the right thing. And for me right now, it isn't. But without it, I would have never. I don't think I would have ever really stepped into the realm of energetics and moving energetics and channeling that. It was kind of my jumping off point into those types of things. So I am grateful for that experience that I did have. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to mute. I don't know if anybody else has something to add, but feel free to raise your hand if you want to weigh in. I still need the Jeopardy music button for times like these. We can also, if somebody has something else they would like to talk about today, we could do a change of subject. We can always come back to this if somebody wants to. This is just a free flowing conversation. I know there's an awful lot going on around us these days. So we are open to other subjects as well.
I think that something you said kind of pinged me about kind of the way I was just talking to Silver about this, about the way that in more like leftist type spaces where we're doing a lot more deconstruction, there's a tendency to have that kind of like holier than thou sort of like competition almost, like the way that you said it was your friend or your teacher, I can't recall, it was your friend. um yeah, and how she was saying like, well, it was taught by a woman, so that, it makes it better. Kind of like pinged me for that, because like it's something that uh it's more like respecting boundaries and like people's path, like you said, like Reiki could totally work for some people. That could be like the thing, for them, and it could make the most sense to them. But I think the most important part of, things like autonomy and like human rights and stuff is to literally respect people's like choices to uh you know choose their own path and um build out their information as they see fit. Go ahead, Morgana.
Um, as far as Reiki and energy, um, Dr. Yasui was the person who brought the technique to, you know, modern society. He was a doctor and a Buddhist monk, um, part-time Buddhist monk. Um, and he was studying Sanskrit text, and he found these symbols, and he understood the technique, but he didn't feel that it was like empowered. And that's when he did his pilgrimage, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna fast and I'm gonna pray, and I'm either gonna starve to death or I am going to receive, what I need from, source. Um, However, it's not shared specifically like how he worded that. Um, and he did nearly starve to death. But he did receive, you know, the last little piece of information he needed so Reiki would work. And his goal was to teach that to anyone who wanted to learn, charge nothing for it, and spread this information to anyone who was willing. And in an Eastern Japanese perspective, when we're talking like 1905, 1910, that era, uh, he viewed it as non denominational. Um, and his technique that he practiced then is not the same as what we have now. Strictly speaking. So Dr. Isui, set up a clinic, started teaching and practicing, and he taught it as universal energy, the energy that connects all beings and all things. Some American teachers I've had experience with don't communicate that clearly or well. So when you practice how they teach, in my experience, you end up being very, very drained and tired because you're drawing off your own energy. Because they were either not taught or they don't teach clearly that you're supposed to be drawing off that universal energy, that life energy that's connected to all things and all beings. And Dr. Isui had a nurse, an assistant, because is back in the day, you're not going to have a woman doctor. Of course not. Who was from Hawaii. She was partially Japanese. And at a certain point, she went back to Japan. And Dr. Isui had passed on. And she was the person who started the westernization of the Usui school of Reiki. And she was the person who started charging for classes. She became a controversial person because of that, but she is also the person who preserved a tradition that may have died otherwise, because in Japan, what was going on in Hawaii and what was going on in Japan were completely separated. And there was just this tiny little Yasui school of Reiki that was still preserved. And, post World War II, after this huge boom, during, the hippie era and the post hippie era with Reiki and energy healing and all these things, the Japanese original can trace back to Dr. Yasui school of Reiki. They had no idea what was going on in America and all this. And they were still following the Japanese traditional systematic teaching. And the two were not really comparable because one had been westernized and one was it's like comparing how they teach martial arts in the East and how they teach them in America. They're not the same at all. So there's that. I still use Reiki, but that was after a very long period. As you can see, I studied, the roots of it going forward. That's kind of my thing. I'm like, but where is this really from? I really found out like the whys and the wheres and everything, and it still fit with me and what I do personally. But only after I did that research, that deconstruction, be like, where did this really come from? How is this really supposed to be practiced? And making that connection that's missing often. The one thing that still really bothers me is we have the westernized chakra system, which is not, it's no, but it's so ingrained in how the Western Reiki system is taught. It's hard to have a conversation without including it. And I just don't even like, I'm like, no, I don't even want to talk about it. But it's hard to make yourself understood unless you're talking to somebody else who's done all this deconstruction. Um, so that's the one hang up I still have. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Petra, you can go ahead. You're up next. Thanks, Morgana.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Morgana said. I think I was doing a lot of decolonial work as I learned Reiki, and so it was something where I was taking things apart as I was learning them. I was like, and also I am never someone who's really like my Reiki course wasn't like I have my Reiki master teacher, which means I technically have all 4 levels. I can attune other people, the whole shebang, lang, whatever. But like I took 4 different like 8-week courses. So very different from how like most Reiki is taught like in a 4-hour afternoon. Like here's your 2-minute, go forth. Just like do your thing. So there was lots of space to kind of like deconstruct things, and there were all of us were kind of like from TikTok. It was like in COVID times. It was like 2021 and 2022. And so there was a group of us, and we were from like different kind of all kinds of different backgrounds, and so we would all bring kind of like our own understandings of things, and we were all deconstructing stuff in our own ways. And so it was really, I think, a very unique experience. I think it would be very hard to replicate in any other setting. And so I like when people are like, I have beef with how Reiki is taught. I'm like, me too. Like, fair enough. Because I think it can be really like capitalistic and really like kind of like fast, and doesn't give people space to like integrate and to process what they're understanding. I really did like my course. Like it was like 8 different sessions, but it was over like more like 3 months, just because of like breaks and other things and whatever. Um and yeah, so I what Morgana was saying about like if you're not kind of taught the history piece and kind of the foundations, and there also isn't time and space for you to like do your own research and like kind of understand more of like where you're like, I have questions about this, or like, what is this about? It can feel really like consumptive. And I think that also understanding where and how something starts gives you kind of like, in a way, like the energetic signature of the thing, right? Like this is the foundational root of like, this was a spiritual practice. This person like went on a like Master UC went on a spiritual journey to understand something more fully. It wasn't like, even when people are like, it's appropriated from Buddhism or from Hinduism, or I'm like, that's like, these aren't the right words for what happened, because there is deference and respect inherently in that process. Like if you go to fast on a mountain about something because you want to understand it fully, you're not like, I'm going to take this and make all this money. Like, you know what I mean? Like those aren't compatible. And I think that in today's day and age, especially with like TikTok, where people can like get this kind of snap judgment and like, it's like this. And it's like, understanding the full spectrum of the history is more important than we realize. so many other thoughts when I meant to write things down and I was bebopping around. So bear with me. I think the other piece for this with me with Reiki is like, I am, you guys know this, always a scientist. And so I went and did research about like a literature search about Reiki. I'm like, what's the scientific basis of this? And for me, understanding that like Reiki as a form of energy work can increase parasympathetic nervous system activity, can help your body go into rest and digest, whether that's like with co-regulation through with the practitioner or like how that actually works. I don't totally know, but that's part of how it can be a therapeutic modality. Was really interesting and like helped me kind of understand it and demystify it, so to speak. Like, I think the other piece of it is like, um, you know, I mean, I was taught around Reiki where it was like, don't use the symbols if you're not attuned because they can like really exhaust you because it'll like use your life force energy versus like the only thing that Reiki allows you to do is allows you to be a channel for like that's like that kind of energy or whatever. But even in that, like there was at the beginning, I remember having to learn really like, and I think that this is common for people who are naturally intuitive with energy. And like, to be clear, I'm like, I've been doing energy work my entire life. Like my dog was sick with cancer before I was attuned to Reiki. And once I learned Reiki, I was like, oh, I did stuff like this already. Like lots of different things with him just intuitively, instinctively. But having to learn to like, for me, it was like to step out of the way of just like, I'm just a conduit. Like that's what this experience is about. And that helped me not be so tired and whatnot. And the other piece is that like, often when you're doing sessions for other people, some of whatever their intentions are, whatever they're working through, like works out with you, which like feels like a relational component where it's like you're not just I'm just this person. Like when you go to a massage therapist, you don't also get a massage. Does that make sense? But when you do an energetic work, like a energy work session on someone, there are elements of that because it's also going through your own energy field that like processes as well. So for me, sometimes it'll be like, oh, I didn't know I needed to also look at this thing. And that will kind of conveniently come up. I don't do a lot of sessions for other people. I use Reiki mostly for myself. It's been mostly part of my trauma work kind of stuff in helping my body process and integrate like really big emotional experiences and things like that. Yeah, exactly. And I think Jenny, the main piece with Reiki is that it's consent based. Like that was something that I really liked about it. It is like you you could technically try to do Reiki on someone without their consent, but that is not the foundational component of this form of energy work. And for me, I just needed, when I learned it, I was like, I need a framework for like, I was on the precipice of a very intense spiritual awakening. And I was like, I need something to gird this. I have no idea. Like I felt like I was in free fall. And the universe kind of used my first Reiki attunement to help me get off a medication that was making me like dissociated from my life and completely disconnected. And so it was really beneficial. Sorry, my dog is like just doing this in the corner. Oh. And I'm like, wait. She's just like, I'm grumpy. I just want attention. Why are you talking to other people? Talk to me. But I think, there are lots of like any discipline that's been westernized, like there's tons of problems. And I mean, we kind of talked about this last week where it was like, anything that gets like put through a Western lens inevitably ends up kind of being a little bypassy. It ends up being a little bit about avoidance. Like it often can feel ungrounded and and then also you can meet with those people in those disciplines and they can be really defensive about those things, right? Like I even experienced that with my own teacher. And I think that is more to do with whiteness and white supremacy than it is with the discipline itself. It just happens to be like transmuted through white people to white people. So it's like there's that inherent what do I want to say? Like lack of shame resilience, like an unpracticed ability. Like people don't hold that skill yet of like being able to face that, like, hey, this thing that's been really beneficial to me also can be really harmful or can not feel right to people and can not make sense to people. And for me, I'm like, I think it makes a ton of sense. I'm like, yeah, contextually, of course, like, and I think that nobody needs to be doing things or working with certain energetic disciplines if it doesn't feel right in their body. Like ultimately, that's the most important thing. I think that, like, Reiki has been hugely beneficial to me. I've been really like, I also have like used it in my own way where, like, when I've taken payment, I've set aside money for like Stop Asian Hate groups and kind of things like that, where I'm like, I feel like there needs to be a reparations part of this. That's what feels good to me energetically. Um, and for me, the money part is just about energy exchange. Is like, this is not zero amount of my time. This is not zero amount of my energy and effort. I prepare myself before sessions. I do my own energy processing work before I do a session with someone else so that I can be fully present with them. It would be like even if you do like spell work for someone, like where you would prepare. And I think the other piece is that makes sense to me is like things like the symbol, they're more like sigils. Like it's like someone's made a sigil and this is what this thing does in this discipline. And so hopefully that helps make sense. Ocean, when we were talking about the like person being like, I'm drawing these on your soul, I'm like, that would freak me out, and I do Reiki. Holy crap, that's super weird. Sorry. I was just like, I like got the heat. I'm like, I'm uncomfortable for you. I don't like this at all. And so, to be clear, like, I personally thinks that like your energetic system is more in line with a physical system. It is your like emotional, like, to me, Reiki is more of an energetic, emotional, like, it helps me process really intense emotions or physical sensations. It helps me deal with overstimulation. Like, it's more rooted in that than it is some kind of like esoteric soul work. Like, yeah, maybe it kind of helps me with that stuff by helping me metabolize what's going on in my everyday meat suit life and like feelings and trauma stuff. But it's not like most of the, and I'm going to be a little nerd and info dump about like kind of energy stuff in general. Is like most of our understanding of energy work in general, when it comes to kind of like Reiki or Qigong, or comes from traditional Chinese medicine, which is rooted in the physical body. Is like, you have energy meridians, there are points, there are things that correlate to other things. This is a discipline that has been around for thousands of years. There's like texts going all the way back into several different dynasties, and has a correlation between energy meridians, energy points, different things and places on the body, and herbs and other things. Like, it's very complex. And when you kind of like do the history nerd thing and you go back and you're like, okay, like these all kind of come out of this, and like this is how different people have taken this knowledge and like understood it and expressed it in this way or in this way or in this way. It helps to kind of be like, this is actually not some like ungrounded practice, if that makes any sense. And I'm not that I don't think our souls are grounded, I do, but like, it's not, I feel like nobody gets to touch my soul but me. Like, I don't think that that's even possible. Like, I don't think another person can impact my soul. Can another person impact me so that I impact my soul? Sure, maybe. I don't know. These are my thoughts. Like, but like, I think that it would creep me the fuck out. That's all I'm trying to say. Like, if someone said that, like, thank you. And that's also not been my experience as someone who practices on other people and practices on myself. I also, part of my practice is a land practice, and that's been around since, I don't know, like I started doing it on full and new moons, like as soon as I was attuned. It just was like instinctive, where I was like, I'm giving Reiki to the land. Like, this is about like processing and relating and being connected to. And so I think that is the way that I approach that is probably because of who I am. Probably. Do I think a lot of people treat Reiki like that? No, I don't. I don't think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people are kind of like still have that dominion based thinking around things where they're like, Reiki is a thing I do to you. And it's like, woo. Like, that's not how it works for me. I'm like, Reiki is a thing that, like, it's essentially the same thing as like, I will stand in the gap for a person if I'm praying for them, like, to the universe, or I'm doing what, like, it's, it's one of those kinds of things where you're like, sometimes you can't do certain things for yourself, maybe because it doesn't feel comfortable, maybe because you need another person there. It just feels safer. And for me to, more in keeping with more Morgana said, like, I have a friend that because of the bad experience with my other Reiki teacher, like, didn't get her level 4 attunements and stuff like that, like, didn't get her master teacher stuff. And I did those for her for free, essentially. I was like, let's swap. Like, I'll do this for you, and then you do whatever amount of sessions feels like a reciprocal exchange. And, for me, that's what's felt good. Like, charging money felt weird. Like, I will charge money for like individual sessions where it's like, you can't, there's no other way to exchange, so we're going to use capitalism because this is the current system we live in. But I also am very aware that, like, that's super unique. And like, my teacher even was very like, I won't do things for people, or like, if it, like, and for her, it was her own boundaries. Like, I'm not here to like critique other people, but it can be really consumptive, I think. And so I think that feeling and that understanding can kind of permeate a lot of people's experience. And so I want to like validate those things. I think that's super important. I'm just like, and I'm not an apologist. Well, like, I'm not like that. So I'm like, I'm not like that. And also a lot of people are like, that's just how it is. I've found it incredibly beneficial. I do think you can do energy work without it. I don't think that energy work is less significant. I do think that, like, having a framework helped me, but that's just how my autistic brain works. It's like, if once I have like a foundation, I have a lot of room to like experiment, but it's like, I just need structure in the beginning. So that helped me to be like, okay, I can feel more comfortable doing whatever. I don't invoke Reiki every time I do energy work. I think I do energy work a lot of the time, just completely unaware. Like, it just happens. And I think I've done that most of my life. And so I think that, if it's something where you're like, this feels good, also know that, like, you don't have to do Reiki or take it to do it on the other people. Like, I think that it is an immensely beneficial practice as a personal energetic practice, as a thing that you do for yourself. Like, for me, being able to like, um, support my body in processing like all the somatic stuff that I'm doing all the time, just because I have a backlog of emotional homework from being numbed out on psych meds and other things and being in functional freeze. Like, it's been so helpful for me. And so I would hate for people to be like, boo hiss Reiki because of that. But I also would be like, the caveat is like, know that people are going to teach you some fuck shit and you don't have to listen to them. Like, you have to listen to yourself. That's really what's most important. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I don't know where we're at with things. Yeah, exactly what you're saying, Ocean, about like not needing to call on Reiki and like not having connections to that blessed discipline. Yeah. Yeah, beyond me, and I participate with it. I love that, Morgana. Yeah, and I think that, like, what did I write last time? I wrote something really profound, and I was like, "Ooh, so cool," and then I never got to share it because we were talking about things. Um, Reiki is a specific energy language, like energy work is communicating, but there are multiple languages that someone can communicate in, and so it's like this is one way of working with this thing in like a systematic fashion. And I also think that it is, oh, this is a little pingy. Sorry. Like, this language is a little rude. So if I offend anybody, you get to tell me to fuck off. How about that? I think it's naive in this day and age, given that we live under the thumb of white supremacy, to think that we could find a discipline that is devoid of problems, of issues. Like, that's why I was like, that word feels mean. The naive was like, that's one of my guides being a little thingy. It's like, just say the thing, Petra, just spit it out. Because I think that, like, shit's fucked, like, everywhere. And so everything that we're dealing with, like, there are problems with witchcraft, there's problems with, like, paganism, there's Nazis and fucking Norse paganism all over the place. Like, there's shit fucking everywhere. You're gonna have issues everywhere. And it's about, like, cultivating your discernment to be like, no. And, like, also, here's the thing, something might feel good now, and in 5 years, you might be like, that doesn't work. Like Stephanie was saying, it's like, I don't like it. No. Like, we're allowed to grow and change what we understand. And it doesn't always mean like that thing in its entirety is bad. Although our brains really love to be like the good bad binary, things can not be for us for many reasons. And there's lots of space to explore why that is. And I think that that's part of the fun stuff of all this, is being like, what's going on? Like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna stop jibber jabbering and let somebody else talk. I don't know who's next.
We are open to more weigh-ins or topic changes as well, if anybody feels called. I'm not sure why I keep thinking of sharing this, but I keep thinking of sharing it. So I'm just going to share it. I'm not sure if it's a topic change, sort of, not really. But when I was talking earlier about my interaction with my friend, massage therapist, it turned out to be like a really, that conflict ended up being like a really, really positive thing for our friendship. We were able to, our first reaction was to be like, I'm out of here, forget it, we're not talking, we're not doing this. And then we both went like, wait a minute, this is important. Like, let's take a deeper look at this. And I was able to immediately flip it into like a shadow work practice with our friendship. And it ended up being it. I think it changed the energetics of our entire relationship, like having that conflict. And because of the things that I've learned in Bright and Dark and how to look at those shadows, it turned that experience around into something really amazing for our friendship. Even since then, we've had like just so much better understanding and respect of each other. That I'm glad that little blow up happened. And I'm finding that in a lot of things, in relationships, in absolutely everything in my life. And now, I've been in Bright and Dark for what, like 2.5 years or something like that. So I don't know why. It's not really a topic change, but I just wanted to I kept thinking about that experience and that story, so I felt called to share it a little bit here and how um, that shadow work has really been showing itself in my life absolutely everywhere now. And when I'm looking at the things that are going on in my country, in the USA, it's a real shit show here. I'm viewing it from that shadow work perspective as a society, and um, it's helping me to be able to process some of the stuff that's going on too. So I think I just want to say yay shadow work. Cause yay shadow work. It's like the best thing. And Petra, I loved so much what you had to share about the Reiki and how your point that you thought would be pokey, I was cheering because that is 100% correct. I think that at this point in our society, there's absolutely nothing that hasn't been tainted somewhere along the way, but that doesn't negate the fact that they're still good, right? Or as I prefer, aligned and not aligned, in that experience. So I wanted to thank you for the poke because that was a good one. I love it. And that's all I really have to say there. And again, so if anybody wants to weigh in or change topics, I don't know if anybody in here. It's Imbolc was yesterday. I dabble in those holidays a little bit, but not a lot. And I know that there might be some in here who celebrated. I would love to hear about some of that because I know I have a lot more to learn. If anybody wants to share any of that or anything at all.
I just wanted to be like, I loved your align, not align. I was like, oh yeah, I love this. Cause it's like, I hate one, I don't like binaries or dichotomies because to me, everything is a spectrum. I'm just like, this is shades of whatever. Like, everything is like, there's one extreme end and the other extreme end, and then there's all the shit in between. Which is usually where I live my life, is like in the gray of it all. But I love because it's also like, not aligned doesn't mean bad. It just means it doesn't fit. It's like, it can be like a pair of pants is gorgeous on my friend and doesn't fit me, and it doesn't mean the pants are bad. Just like, those are for you and they're not for me, and hey, here we go, whatever, it's good. And I also really love your point about the conflict with your friend, which is like, I don't think y'all have really heard me. Maybe Ezra might have heard me because I'm like, I love this shit so much. But I'm like, conflict is generative. If you do it right, and right being like, if you show up and be present for all the fuck shit that you have to move through to meet the other person and your shadow, that shit can be so potent and you can foster so much intimacy with someone. I firmly believe if we have no conflict in a relationship, we actually have an absence of intimacy. I'm like, you can't be close to people you're not safe to disagree with. You just can't. It's not possible. We have to, as human beings, know that I can be no to someone and they won't leave me, because I think that that's where a lot of people pleasing comes from, because we all kind of had a lot of that as kids, where it's just like, I will be abandoned if I have needs. Shit. I guess I don't have any. And so we're unlearning that as adults, and it can be really, really beautiful to be like, fuck. And I also think it's a relatively unpracticed skill. I think that's why we have a lot of polarization politically, not just because and I don't say that to minimize, there are things that are objectively not okay politically in the world. Not trying to sweep that under the rug right past it at all. But I do think that we have lost the skill in our society of sitting with people that we disagree with and kind of trying to find common ground so that we can teach each other shit. People just like to yell at each other on the internet, be like, you're wrong, I'm right. The angry hall monitor energy. I read that meme on Instagram this week and I was like, oh my God, that's what it is. And I fucking hate it. I don't like it at all because it's so counterproductive. Just cool, you're right. And this person's learned nothing and they're just pushed further this way. Like, can we all just have a call to our own humanity? What about that? That's like apolitical. Like, humanity, I don't think is political. I think there are people that would disagree with me. They're probably not in this room. But like, like, I'm also willing to sit with them and be like, tell me more about that. Like, tell me more about why you so vehemently think that I'm so wrong. I'm here for it. Let's go. And I think that like, it also takes time and practice to regulate through our own stuff, and also some serious intense boundary work of being like not taking it personally, and also like our own threat response, because sometimes we learned growing up that disagreeing was a life threat. It was like, nope, if I disagree, I will be abandoned, and my little nervous system will like be lost and left, and that is so unsafe. So I want to validate that too. It's like, these are not easy things. But it's really, I really like, I'm grateful that you shared that, Stephanie, and I'm really grateful that that happened in that relationship, because I think that so many times those things can happen and people are just like, that person, and it's just like, like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when you said like, she can't be whatever because she's a woman, I was like, whoa, I don't like that at all. So I'm like really proud of you for like going through it with that person and whatever stuff came up from that, because I was like, I had a very visceral reaction to that. I don't know what yours was like for this person where you actually know them. I'm like, that probably was kind of intense. So yeah, and I'm really glad we're here talking about this stuff. I just love this space so much. It's just so neat, and I'm so glad we kind of like go into this shit and just kind of like sit there together, and also can like disagree and have different perspectives. Like, I don't know. That's also why, I don't know if you probably have noticed, because I do it a lot, where I'm like, you can tell me to go fuck off, because I'm like, the like disagreement is welcome. Like, you can tell me I'm full of shit. That's fine. Like, I'm fine with that. Like, not in an I don't care way, but I'm like, I'm open to like whatever resistance is here, because I think that it's important. Like, it is meaningful and makes sense and is valid. And I think that like, I wouldn't be here if a compliance was required. Absolutely. I want to say.
So how's everybody doing? It's kind of a quiet room at times today. I think I'm assuming there's just so much going on for people. But I will leave a quiet opening if anybody wants to. Okay, I was just reading Ray's. You don't know a lot about Reiki, and that's okay, right? And if we want a subject change, that's also okay. If anybody needs support in anything or wants input on anything, the floor is open.
I was curious how, like last week I said, Reiki was a gateway drug. And I think that is true for me because it was kind of my first step into the unseen and acknowledging that there's more than what our world kind of shows us and tells us is real. And then, so yeah, I don't really practice Reiki, but like, yeah, it was my introduction to more. And I was curious if how that journey for anybody else has gone, like how that evolution of the energy work has evolved for them.
That I like that, Coral, because that was kind of similar for me. Reiki was my first exploration into energy work outside of the religion, that I was brought up in, which used a lot of energy stuff in hindsight, right? Some aligned, some not aligned, to use it that way. And then, so Reiki was my first kind of foray into that. And it has been such a zigzag ever since then that it's hard for me to say that I've specifically dabbled in any other types of energy work outside of just what feels intuitive to myself. And that has actually been the road, right? From like Reiki and learning that more structured stuff to then into the like deconstruction of those things and learning a lot through Bright and Dark to be able to trust myself and that I have that ability and power and using the intuition to do that. So that's kind of my road. It was kind of that middle. Reiki was that middle jumping off point to a zag to allow me to really like deconstruct and trust myself. So, but I'm not really super familiar with other kinds of energy healing. So I'm interested in hearing it if anybody else has any experiences with those. Or I can change the subject, which I just totally got pinged to do. I have been seeing a lot of organization, which is to do a lot of group spell work lately. And it's mayhem, right? When I'm looking in these groups, it's like when you read all the comments in the witchy Facebook groups, it's just like, oh, we need shadow work here. Oh, we need shadow work here. We need it here. But I have been feeling like I have so much spell work I want to do right now that I can't figure out where to even begin. Right? Like, I want to be able, because it's such chaos here in my country, and then therefore in our neighbors. And sorry, neighbors, you should kick our asses. You really just kick our asses, neighbors. It's time. Jeez, Louise. But I'm trying to work more spell work for the greater good, if you will. And yeah, those neighbors. We are those neighbors. Ugh. But that's okay. We've got some neighbors who are showing us who's boss right now, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. But yeah, so I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna work on some spell work about um bringing truth forward, right? Like that's a really, really good one. Also a very risky one, very, very risky. Like you want to be super specific about that one, and things like that. But if anybody is working on like spell work or practices for the good of the collective and the whole, I would be super happy to hear it. Alicia, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Hello. I was just sitting here listening, but I'm out here gardening as well, trying to get my garden going. We've had like a super mild year this year, winter-wise. So I don't even need the coat I'm wearing, but um, just mentioning spell works and things. And when it comes to me, I'm always going to bring it back to nature. um, so I just feel like we all need to kind of collectively, and this is just like me feeling it, that we need that collective, Kaz, let me go let him out, tapping into our environment, wherever we're at. Like for me, I'm not in the country, right? But it doesn't matter where you're at. There's always something springing up around you. And let me go let him out. Okay, bye. You can come out. Okay, go ahead. But I just, as I was listening, I was like, yeah, I need to bring that up because I don't know. I just been feeling that the trees that are around us. I mean, most cities have trees. And things, and I really feel like they're reaching out to make those connections with us. And so talking about spell work, the first things that popped into my mind was we need to figure out the energies and the frequencies and being able to connect. I think in a lot of ways, we're at a big disadvantage from other cultures because we are so disconnected, right? I mean, even concrete has a vibration. Everything has a vibration. Everything has a frequency. And I think that's one of those things that we need to tap into more of and spend time feeling out. Just learning how to be self-sufficient as to the best of your own potential. Not that you need to go out and buy a whole bunch of preppy stuff, but know where things are, know where natural resources are, if possible, or how long it would take you to get to something like that if needed. Just do your own little prep work, however you feel called to do that. But really tap in and tune in now that really the trees have all woken up again. I just feel it so strongly that they are all coming back to their branches, their trees, their roots. The sap is coming up, the barks are changing color. They're coming in back into their own power. And I feel that that's coinciding with kind of where we need to be at. But there's so many things that you can do. Just go out and touch the earth and feel that, get in tune. I think that's basically what I'm feeling to be called, is get in tune with your environment around you. I think the more tapped in and the more tuned in we are to where we're at, the better that we understand ourselves, the better that we can move forward. So shadow work obviously is huge, right? We all know that. But the more layers you peel back, the more it's like it's the more you're getting back to your own self. And I know my own self when I was a younger kid was all about outside, being with the trees, being with the animals and the critters. And that to me is really important. So I think we need to each kind of figure out what called to us as a kid, what called to us basically, yeah, what was calling to us, and kind of get down to that. I loved listening to all this energy work and things. This is really neat. I'll just throw in a little bit of Reiki. Was one of the first things that opened me up to the possibility of energy actually existing. I was a young kid, and we had a really good friend who didn't believe in anything like that. And she related an experience she had with a Reiki healer and how much it actually helped, and she could feel it moving around. And it was like the cracking of the door for me, that somebody who was a devout Mormon person and I'll never believed in any of that kind of stuff actually admitted that there was something to it, and it was a crack in the door for me to go, oh. And I didn't really experience any Reiki until Petra. So thank you, Petra. I've loved it. Yeah, as if anyone wants to hit Petra up, if she's still doing it, she was great. But yeah, I think for me, what keeps coming to me is we need to really tap into what's around us. And for me, that's getting a garden going, and just being self-sustaining as much as possible. But really, if you guys can tap into the trees, just go out there and open up your mind and see what happens. Oh, Cass, you're gonna knock this over. Anyway, I'll open it up and move it from there. But yeah, that's what I was feeling, pinged to share. I hate Cass.
No, Alicia, I was sitting here because like it's maybe 20 here degrees. Like me, like everything is under ice. We're under all the warnings. Like don't go anywhere. There's gonna be more ice. Um, but there are things that I can do. You know, I gotta take a look at my seeds and see what I've got. Like, I've got a lunar planting calendar that outlines, you know, for my area, not only what to plant or start or think about at this period of time, but also in alignment with the moon phases, which is really cool. I should pull out that calendar. So I like that direction of things because like in Witchwork Circle, you know, they one spell craft with the sunflower seeds or, you know, the flower seeds and stuff like that. Like what a great way to do that kind of spell work and prep for that. For, I mean, it's going to be months here before I can do much, but to start, you know, I believe that the biggest part of spell work isn't actually the spell. Like it is all the thought processes and thinking about and the figuring out and the tweaking and the research and all that time and energy that you spend creating the spell is much more important than the actual carrying out of the spell. So I am grateful. I feel like that gave me a little bit of a direction because I've been feeling like there's so many directions I could go right now. Some based in panic, some based in joy, like all the feelings, right? That I'm kind of been feeling a little frozen. Um, that's probably, you know, trauma because this is traumatic. But I really like that suggestion and I appreciate that, Alicia. Thank you.
I don't see other hands raised, but I'll just throw in if you guys are frozen out there still, like this is unusual for us in Utah. But tap into the moon, go out and look at the stars. Go feel if you can, feel some sun on your face. Just do something that is getting that connection with you and open your mind up to see where that flows. I guess is kind of what I'm thinking. So
Go ahead, Ray. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much. Same to all of you guys, honestly. I really just wanted to come here and say thank you all so much because this morning I was so dysregulated. I was going through Facebook and I knew I shouldn't be going through Facebook because my whole feed is just whatever's going on in the world right now and it's overwhelming. And then Amazing Petra reached out and was like, "You should come to SASS." And I was like, "Oh my God, I should come to SASS." And we finally figured it out how to get me on here. And I'm so glad that I came. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you guys because you guys helped me so much change my day around and get me out of doom scrolling and panicking. So I really just wanted to say thank you to all of you, and I love you so much.
We love you too, Ray. It's super, super good to see you. And I hope, you know, this is open, the first Sunday of every month to everybody who, you know, from the courtyard and everything. So um, hopefully we get to see a lot more faces a little more regularly. Carrie, I think you had a subject change if you want to go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I do. Because I'm always struggling with parenting and and I need some witchy ways. I think it's been very, very focused on okay. Well, the situations that we're in these days are really complicating things, right? And so tensions are a lot higher, and I'm spending a lot of time connecting with community and dealing with, you know, things kind of in a very adult sphere and very much not in a child sphere. And I feel like a lot of my parenting has been kind of focused on psychology and emotions, like my own and my kids. But I've not spent actually a lot of time thinking about how to incorporate witchy ways into it, except that, you know, he shows up in these environments and hears a lot of this stuff. Um, I guess I'm trying to set up rituals that we can do together. I just wondered if people have advice, suggestions, etc. Tensions are higher and everybody's sort of emotionally in more challenging kind of situations, and it's definitely surfacing. And different ways. I want different ways to try to approach things, because the ways that I have been approaching them is not it's not necessarily most effective. Yay, Petra! Yes.
I was like, what I just have questions first, because I was like, I hear you, but I also feel like it might be contextually important to be like, what have you been trying and what has been happening? If you feel comfortable sharing,
Yeah, of
obviously, if
course.
you don't want to, but I'm like, I think it would be hard for people, even myself, to be like, I don't know how to suggest because I don't know what you're doing already. I'm a little lost, but like with you
Okay,
in the
fair.
like shit's been cray of just kind of everything. So I'm like valid. How you feel is valid. I'm sure things are
Oh my
banana pants.
God.
Yeah, that.
Okay, so on top of all of the craziness of everything, he's been sick this past week, so he's been home the entire week, and that naturally lends to like high tension. And by the end of the week, I think we were just locked in a power struggle. And so with me being exhausted and stressed out and overstimulated, and him I don't know, he's recovering from being sick. He's been home all week. He wants me to play with him. I don't want to play with him. He doesn't want to eat anything. He needs to eat healthy food. I mean, I feel like this is all very sort of typical parent-child struggle. Okay. My general approach to that food has really been, this is like where I'm focused right now, is like on the food battle. And I'm trying so hard. I have tried so hard for food not to be a battle. Like, here's the food, here's the options. I'm backing off. You eat it, you don't eat it, it's up to you. If you have a suggestion for something healthy that you would like to eat, I'm open to it. But you know, you can't have potato chips after you vomited today. Like, that's just not that we don't do that. And we, for 24 hours, we were locked in a battle over, he refused to eat anything. And at the end of 24 hours, when I still wouldn't give him potato chips, I lost it. Okay, so what I typically try to do is deep breath, calm, remove myself from the situation. I am the parent, I am in charge, blah. And I just felt like none of it was working. None of it was working, and there was no way we were not gonna clash, and there was no way we were not going to be in a power struggle. And I do not want to be in a power struggle with my kid over food. Like, we are so fortunate. We have so much food and we have so many options for things that he can eat. And I like all of my therapy approaches were just like nothing was working, both to regulate myself and to provide him space. And so this is where I need like help. Petra, does that provide enough context or not really? Okay.
Totally does. I'm just gonna okay, so like you're like I was like, when you said potato chips, I like started laughing because I was like, oh no. Okay, so fun fact, something that I've told people when they have gastroenter like GI illnesses, vomiting specifically, is that the best way to rebalance your electrolytes after that stuff is potato chips. So that's why I started laughing.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And I want to say this piece of like, kids are very intuitive eaters. They like know, like, we condition ourselves out of these things. And this isn't your fault. This is the fault of modern parenting, of like, you know, and of like trying to be a good parent, of like, if I want to give you something healthy, I want to whatever, this is full of salt and this is full of like carbs. And it's like, yeah, when you puke, that's literally, you just need glucose, you need potassium, and you need sodium. And that's all in potato chips, and a little bit of oil that actually like helps the metabolism like balance out and them to feel full. So my piece, like as a person, one caveat, I don't have kids. I have dogs. I am in healthcare, so like I can add the like nerd sciencey physiology part of it, and also the person who's like, I'm like, this is how I, after I vomited, this is what I eat. Like that, I have potato chips because I don't want to get an electrolyte imbalance and have to go to the hospital because I have medical trauma. So we're not doing that. I don't go to the hospital if I don't have to. So like, what I would say is, one, cut yourself some slack. Cut yourself some slack. I know that's really hard. I know that's probably really hard, and that's like maybe shitty advice. And you're like, hey, Petra, go fuck yourself. You don't have kids. Super fair. Again, always fair. I will always accept that. It. I think that the thing I did this as a family medicine like resident and whatever. It's just like, if they've been sick, give them whatever they want as long as it's not going to make them sicker. And you can Google the like is it okay for them to have potato chips after they have if they vomited? Like the internet will have something that's like, yeah, probably, because it's fine. And it's hard because you're told all these, like, if you're a good parent, you have all these regimes and then you're trying all these, and like, and what I often would have conversations with parents is like, take 5 deep breaths and realize like they're not gonna fucking die. Because like you're not losing the parenting battle. This, like, I stick with fed is best throughout the lifetime. Like, like, because I've had patients where the kids are autistic and they have massive sensory issues with food, and they're like, all they eat is sweet potatoes. I don't know what the fuck to do. And I'm like, give them a multivitamin, and like, we'll do what we can. Like, this is, you kind of just like, they're like, children are like cats. It's so true. Where it's like, if they don't want to do something, they're not fucking doing it. And the only thing that you do when that happens is you just exhaust yourself. And so that's where like the boundaries for yourself to be like, I don't care. You're eating. That's it. And also, like, if they're sick and they decide to, like, kids will not eat if they're too sick to still eat. They won't, because those kids come to me in hospital. They're like, I don't want to. But if they're like been unwell, just take your losses. Find chips that are healthier, like those veggie chips or whatever. Like, they make chips out of beets and carrots and parsnips, like all the friggin' things. If there's something where you're like, on my side of it, I need to feel like I'm not just feeding my child junk food. And also realize that, like, if you're a millennial and you survived off like Lunchables and like sugar cereal, like, we didn't eat good either. And we all like figured it out, you know? And there's this immense pressure that is so understandable, and also we actively have to let go of, because the world is so good at telling you that you're a shit parent. It is so good at it because capitalism benefits off of you thinking you're a crappy parent, and you have to do all these, you have to do this, and you have to do this program, and they have to be in this sport, and they have to do, because you're spending money, right? And so just remember that. It's just that, like for thousands of millions of years, we kind of ate whatever we could pick off trees, right? Like, they'll be okay. You'll find a way. And and the most important thing in that is giving yourself the grace so that you can regulate, right? And coming here and on the app and being like, this fucked, I feel crazy. And probably there's way more parents in here that are going to say things that are probably more impactful than what I'm saying, but like that like, you're not alone, right? And the only thing I can think of in terms of resources is this girl, Robin Goebel. I'll put the spelling in the chat. She has a great Facebook page. She has a great podcast, and she talks about nervous system regulation and attachment parenting within that context. She talks more specifically about kids that have been adopted, but kids that have been adopted have attachment trauma, and so they are the most dysregulated of kiddos. So it's like, it's a good space for any parent who's struggling with a kid, because it's like, one, you're probably going to feel like you're like, hey, my kid's not that bad. Wow, okay. There'll be a little bit of that, which is normal and human and good. That's fine to be like, okay, Like, I maybe can do this if these people are dealing with this. Like, maybe I actually can, like, I have more skills than I think, which Carrie, I would say that you definitely have more skills than you feel like you do right now. Like,
Feel like I have
I'm
zero skills after this last week.
I'm like, that feeling so valid objectively as someone who knows you. I'm like, you definitely have skills. I feel like everyone here would agree with me on that. And so I will put the name in the chat, and she has a Facebook page and she has a podcast and like books and all these things, and it kind of talks a lot about like regulating yourself and how to like extend that to your child and not get stuck in like tug of wars with things. And it's something that I've given lots of people, like friends and other people, about like when they're like, I don't know how to deal with this kid. And it's frustrating because like the way that we're taught to parent under current society paradigms is control. And
yeah, that's
children,
exactly. And that's that was the feedback that I got from my mom. Like when what I needed was, yeah, this shit's tough. She was just like, you need to knuckle down and control. You have to prepare him for life. You need to, he needs healthy food process. Yeah, I know, Daphne, and I was like, thanks, Mom, super helpful. I'm trying to not do all of the things that you did to me when I was a kid.
yeah. You're
But
like, I would like to have a positive emotional relationship with my child later. Thanks, Mom. I would like my child to never have this conversation that I'm having with you right now. Okay. Dear God.
Yeah. Okay.
So super valid. And yeah. And you're breaking cycles right now. That is the most uncomfortable place to be. And you're in the trenches. Like, parents, like, holy crap. It is a lot. That is a tall order, because you are like getting triggered and you're in the thing and you're tired, and then there's like it's all this layers and layers and layers. So it's just like, number one, you're not going to do this perfectly. Rule, like, the only thing that you have to do is like, don't make it worse. Don't make it worse. That's it. You don't even have to make it better. You just have to not make it worse.
Okay.
Like, attainable life goals.
Yes.
This is something I also, P.S., this is a speech I gave to medical students very many times, because I was like, in so many times in medicine, you're in these super high stress situations and you cannot make it better. There is a no win. Like, telling someone that they're dying of cancer, there's no win. There's no win. You cannot make it better. It is the worst day of their life, but you can make it worse. So just don't do that. And I think that parenting is not unlike high stress medicine. I'm going to be honest. There's lots of times where I'm like, relatable feelings. Like, it feels very life and death. There's a lot of, you're like, this is oh my God, what if my child never speaks to me again? Like, whatever your brain is telling you. And so those things are super valid. And I just want you to know that, like,
it's like he's going to be malnourished. He's not going to have healthy eating cycles when, processes when he's an adult. He's, it's all of that.
Like, how old is he?
4.
Yeah, you got time. You got lots of time. Development, you have so much time. And also, like, the most important thing for a kid is their bond with their caregiver. So it's like, being there with him and giving up the war is more important. And I don't mean like letting him win everything. I mean like giving yourself some slack, right? So that you can like pick your battles, because you can't pick every single fucking one with, like, especially with a 4-year-old. Like, children under fucking 5, you're God. Like, no. Until you can send them away to school and you can get a break from them, nope. Like, it's just like, absolutely not. Anyway, I'm gonna hand this over to someone else.
Okay, thank you.
Because I feel like Stephanie probably has lots of good stuff to say, but yeah.
Actually, I think, Coral, did you still want to weigh in before I go?
I don't have anything terribly eloquent to say. Petra said it really well, but I'm a dietitian, and I was like, yeah, why not potato chips? And yeah, like one of my things on nutrition is there's no food so unhealthy for you that not eating is the better option. And like Petra said, that is best. So yeah, like it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs with nutrition, of like, and the basis is like getting enough. And I mean, if you look at people who survive famine, who are food insecure, even within our own country. Like, they don't get to choose what food they get. They just are like, getting enough can keep them alive to keep going. And then maybe sometime else they can replenish nutrients. But yeah, like it's gonna be fine. That's
Coral,
all.
thank
Or,
you.
I don't know, Carrie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think the thing that throws me is that what he would eat, kids would, right? But he would eat candy, potato chips, ice cream, like constantly,
Mhm.
right? If that's what at one night this week, I just like lost my shit and pulled all of the candy out of the cupboard and was like, here you go. And he just ate candy to his heart's content, and that's what he had for dinner. I was like, oh God.
No,
Oh God.
this
But
sounds weird, but that's kind of healthy
why?
as
Why
far
is
as developing a relationship to food. Because there's so many kids, I specialize in eating disorder, and there's so many people who come in to see me who their parents restricted all of the good stuff and was like, nope, we're not going to keep that crap in our house. And then they went to their friend's house, or when they went to college and were out of the house, then they binge on that and they cannot regulate
okay.
having those foods.
Okay. 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 Usually, when he asks me for candy or ice cream, it's because he's hungry.
Mhm.
And if I can, and I can usually feed him something else, so he's got something solid in his stomach and then load him with sugar. And so that's what I thought was going on with the potato chips. Although it turns out the kid really freaking knew what he needed. So I'm like, oh my God, I just don't even know what instincts to trust anymore.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coral.
Firstly, let me commend you on your mothering, because you actually give a shit, and you are this invested and this upset and this frustrated, not only because you're tired and you've been going through this illness, but because you have been caring for this child through this illness. You have been there, you have been present at the expense of yourself, and you are worried about the nutrition. So really good job, Mom. You're doing great. Like, you're doing a great job. And it's making me feel really emotional, because I am a mother of a very disabled child who has a lot of illness, and I know how there's a part of you that just wants to run away sometimes when we have these weeks, and you didn't. And I mean, look at how great you're doing. Like, really, you're doing a really good job. So I wanted to start with saying that. And back to the disabled child piece, like, nothing will make you deconstruct parenting like having a kid that doesn't fit those molds, right? Like, and every kid has their own thing that's different. It's a different experience in parenting. Even if I only have one kid, but my mom said all three of us were very, very different, so you just kind of have to figure it out and deconstruct as we go. I agree with the others in that, what he's going to remember is that you were there. Like, that's what he's going to remember about all this, and that you're taking care of him and comforting him when he was sick. And so, give yourself a pat on the back for that. I don't have a lot to say about the nutrition piece. But something Jen Marie said once to me about parenting that really, really struck me and has flavored most of my decisions ever since, was that if I trust my guides and my intuition to keep me safe and where I am supposed to be, could I possibly trust her guides and her intuition in the same way? And it sounds to me like the potato chip thing is just that scenario, right? Like, I wouldn't have known that either. I wouldn't have thought these would be great for you after you puke. This is just the right choice, right? Like, I wouldn't have thought that at all. But it sounds like it is. It sounds like it could be a really good choice. And so maybe in those times where we think we know we can take that just one beat to be like, is this my conditioning, my, or my intuition? Is this their conditioning or their intuition? Is it truly a dangerous thing? My daughter is a good eater and has always been an adventurous good eater, but sometimes she wants ice cream for dinner and I give it to her because that's not the fight I'm going to have, just trust that that's what she needs in that moment. Easy for me to say, it's not all the time. So that's a different experience, but yeah, I think that that's really all I had to add was that piece about that Jean-Marie shared with me about my intuition was, and trusting her guides and intuition in that same way has helped me a ton. So, yeah, that's all I had. I'm going to mute if anybody else has.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think that's gonna really be immensely helpful in creating space for me to pause and then be curious about why he's asking for things in a particular moment. And that's been the hard thing to do. So thank you. Thank you all. I'm so grateful to all of you.
We have just a little over 10 minutes. I don't know if anybody has more weigh-ins. Carrie, do you feel like closure on this if we were to offer up a subject change?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so we are open to a subject change. We talk about kids and witchy parenting and Reiki and all the things that have been on the table, or something completely new is also on the table. Did anybody do anything for Rainbow that would like to share? How about any new moon practices that anybody would like to share or questions on? I know that we are just on the new side of the new moon. Just being with witches is nice, Coral. I agree. It is good for my soul. The support is invaluable. But yeah, anything like that. I'm just trying to, if we're feeling closure, we might just be feeling closure today. It's been a quieter day. I know a lot of people are overwhelmed. I think it's been like drinking through a fire hose lately. Staying grounded and regulated has been a real challenge for me, especially where I'm at in the middle of winter and I can't just run out into the yard and lay on the ground without literally freezing to the ground. So, hey, does anybody have any input too on like how to stay grounded in an area like mine in the middle of winter? I am always open to ideas, but Coral, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, I'm like, this is kind of heavy for the last like 9 minutes, but just what
can do
is
it.
everybody doing to take care of themselves right now, and what is the survival plan?
That is a super good question, because it's been a fight for me to like maintain that balance with staying informed and also keeping my nervous system regulated. I have been reading for enjoyment, which most of the time I'm reading for learning, for my practice, for expansion of any kind of way, and for knowledge. But lately I've been reading murder books for enjoyment. That's how I'm calming down. Actually, I was reading The Lost Apothecary, which is actually really turned out to be cute. But it was about poisoning men. So had a little feminist touch, but that's kind of what I've been doing, just going and taking breaks somewhere completely imaginary for a while and trying to find that balance with that, and grounding wherever I can. Alicia, I'll pass that on to you.
Oh, I love that. I can go on. Let's get some murder mystery recommendations. You guys ever watch The Fall? That was awesome. Or what's the one I'm watching right now? The Sinner. That one's really good. They're on Netflix and Amazon. But I was just gonna say, get curious. Read a book, watch a movie, watch shows. Some of my favorite things have been like The Dragon Prince and the Avatar, as far as like cartoon things go. I love the arcs and like the redemption arcs and things, the full circle that everyone goes through. Those kinds of things I've really enjoyed. They make you think, kind of take you out of your worry space and put you into someone else's. But the other thing I can say is answer your question on how to ground in the middle of the winter. I just always imagine roots coming out from my feet, going into the ground, and things are always active underground. Things can be frozen solid for the first 6 inches or so, but underneath that, it's still busy. Life is still going on. There's still mycelium that are running through the ground and pulsing and doing all kinds of things. So tap into that. So dig in deep, plant like deep roots, and just imagine your feet roots going clear deep down into the ground, and you'll feel it. You'll feel that aliveness down there. And then I always shoot it back up and connect with the ethers, like the energy up there, the source that we kind of come from, and then mix the two as they go back and forth. That's one way that I stay grounded if you can't get outside. Like I said, this is unusual for this time of year for us. Like normally it's not 50 degrees outside and we're like, yes. But that's one way I stay grounded. Holding some crystals. I went to a crystal shop for I just felt like there was something that I needed that I didn't have. And I found this beautiful chunk of amethyst that just called to me as soon as I picked it up. I'm like, oh, loved it. So go find a new crystal or go through the crystals you have and just hold them and see which ones resonate with you and do a meditation with that. Go outside, feel the wind on your cheeks, and come inside and snuggle up under a book, and feel the difference there between the two, the cold temperature versus being in a warm home and snuggled under the blankets. One of my favorite things to do when it's cold outside is just get those snuggly warm blankets and just cuddle up and just feel safe inside the house, where it's like windy or freezing cold outside and you feel secure. It kind of helps that contrast with me. I don't know, just a couple suggestions for me, but yeah. Anybody else? I can't see anyone else's hands. So
Go ahead, Petra.
I would say because it's so it's minus 21, is minus 21, feels like minus 35 Celsius. I don't know what the conversion of that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold as all crap. Like cold as hell, I feel like would be appropriate. It's very cold outside. So for me, I use a lot more like somatic practices when it's like this. Like I can't just go stick my feet in the dirt. I won't be able to do that until like April. Like it'll be a while. It will be months here. I live quite a bit north. So I tend to like sit at windows and watch birds. I find that to be very like be present, looking around, you moving my eyes, letting kind of my nervous system cue to like there's little birds. And if I can, even though if it's cold, I'll like crack the window so I can hear them, but I'm still inside the warmth because I'm like it's way too cold to be outside. Literally, like in this temperature, exposed skin can freeze in like 10 minutes. That's the level of cold. I let my dog out and like I will be going and putting on clothes to get her up the steps in once we're done. I'm like, oh, you have 5 minutes, girly pop, like, and then we're done. The other thing that I would say for grounding is like I spend time on the floor when it's like this. I just lay on the ground. I'm just like, I need to be like a little pancake person. And baths, yeah, Epsom salts can really help with those. I find I'm an Epsom salt bath girly. I'm also like have all the water signs, so it's like I feel like that doubles as protection. The magnesium sulfate also helps like our muscles relax and actually like turns down the volume of those sensory nerves. It's really, really cool stuff. So and then I just have to time it so that I don't have to go outside until my hair is dry, or else it will literally freeze. But I think the other piece of kind of the general, I mean, like I live in Canada, so it's a bit different for me. It's not entirely different because our economies are so deeply connected, and I'm like, oh God. But is allowing myself to like feel the emotions that come up. Like when I'm angry, doing anger practices to like move and metabolize that anger, or that rage, that like those very primal feelings. Or if I'm scared, like sitting with that fear, or taking that fear for a walk if I can, like doing what needs to, like what my body needs to like metabolize the things. And I also think that like there's a lot of grief in the air, just grieving what is and what we thought life was and what it isn't anymore. And so I think once I learned in somatics that like grief is actually expansive, that it's like oftentimes we feel a lot of pain when we grieve because we somatically brace around the grief. We're like, no, I don't want to do it. And that's what makes it so painful and awful. That helped me to kind of like learn to slowly as I could like surrender and like let that move through. And it's a lot less uncomfortable for me when those big feelings kind of come up, and I can kind of ride the waves. I also often tend to do that in a bathtub. It's just like, I feel safe here. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna like, you know, and just listening to my body and letting, like, if it's like I want to kick my feet right now, or I need to do like 5 jumping jacks, or I need to like punch the air because I'm just so pissed, like whatever it is, like giving myself space to like express. Because I think the more things that we express and metabolize and like let move through, the less freezy, hopelessly despairy I feel personally. Like when I feel that way, it's often because I've been like pushing big emotions that I'm like, I don't want to feel this, away. And so giving myself space to feel what needs to be felt in whatever way feels safe to do so, that can often help me feel like more connected to myself and other people, and just kind of like more better resourced for dealing with whatever's in front of me. But I cannot, like, the pancake on the ground is a really good, like, is a really good, it's a really good one. I don't know, like, I don't know if it's a neurodivergent thing or if it's an energy thing or what it is, but I'm just like the like split. And I have 3 big dogs, so they just kind of all end up like coming and laying on me, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna be here for like half an hour and I'll be fine after that. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I find my dogs really grounding too. Just like cuddling up really always has helped me regulate my system. Obviously, that's probably why they have all the programs for, pets that go and visit, hospitals and so on, because there's that too. And they definitely do that for me. Well, depends. As long as not, they can also go completely the other way, depending on their mood, and make things a little more challenging. But we are up on our time. So thanks for hanging out today with me, cousins. It has been wonderful as always. I'm grateful for you all. And I will see you in the app space. Bye.